Joining us now, former governor of Virginia, Republican Governor Jim Gilmore. Might run for U.S. Senate in 2018. He's still debating it. Everybody's hanging on the edge of their seat. Will he or won't he? Well, we'll have to find out one of these days, but he's joining us now. Former Governor of Virginia, Jim Gilmore. Governor, thanks for being with us.
Hey, John. Thank you very much for the chance to talk to your listeners.
Okay, so let's start with what really matters here and get the football. NFL. Who's your pick to go in the Super Bowl?
Oh, pick to go to the Super Bowl. Well, I'm a lifelong Colts fan, so I haven't been watching all that closely, but I must say I was impressed by the miracle in Minnesota yesterday. I was watching that game and thought that the game was over twice, and then all of a sudden that amazing pass by the Minnesota Vikings. So I figured them to go.
So you're going to go Vikings. Who do you like in the Jacksonville-New England game?
Well, I like Jacksonville. I think that New England is a machine. They're out there. They're constantly good. But there's something about sports, that it's the underdog gets excited and plays above their heads and wins, and that's what Jacksonville's doing.
All right, so the governor going with Jags Vikings. Mike and I going with Eagles New England. We'll have to see what plays out. Only a week to go.
Safe.
Yeah, we're
You're
playing
so conservative.
Safe. Yeah, I know I should get out on a limb, right? I should probably do that after everything else has been going on. So, Governor, let's get to Martin Luther King Day. You were governor. You celebrated this day. What did it mean to you?
Well, I think that, first of all, as governor of Virginia, I did an awful lot of outreach to the African-American community. I was highly respectful and dignified about it. I think Martin Luther King Day, though, stands for the proposition that people should have equal opportunity. That you make sure that the chances that people have to succeed are there, that people are not denied on the basis of race the opportunities to succeed. But Martin Luther King never said that there was a guarantee of any kind of result. He said there was an opportunity to succeed, and then hard work and entrepreneurship and achievement was what was required, not only of the African-American community, but of the white community and everybody else. So he actually stood for genuine equality and was not really trying to divide the races.
Tell me a little bit about when you were governor. Remember, you had to deal with the separate holidays, Martin Luther King Day, and then there was the Lee Jackson Day that was finally combined, and you said that didn't make any sense. Can you walk us through the history of that, Governor?
Well, sure. The history of it had been that there was a Lee Jackson Day, and then the people who really didn't really want a Martin Luther King holiday said, well, let's just combine it with Lee Jackson Day, and the African-American community hated that. They just hated it. So when I was there as governor, my goal there was to try to create some calmness about this. So we maintained the Lee Jackson Day because, after all, it was part of Virginia history. And at the same time, we separated it out and said, nope, let's make Martin Luther King holiday a separate day. And that way we have entirely two different holidays for two different ideas and two different bases of history. And people were a lot more comfortable with that. Again, I think now the goal is often to divide the races. That's what the American politics seems to be like today. I think the American left feels like that they can make progress if they can run on hate and division. But I thought the Martin Luther King's goal there was to, in fact, try to bring people together.
And so whatever happened to the Lee Jackson Day?
I think it's still around. I think it's still recognized. And as far as the history goes, I would encourage people to read the book April 1865, and I think they'll understand a better perspective and context of what Virginia history is about and the history of the United States during that period. We need to learn all those things.
Governor, I know you might run for U.S. Senate. Let's look at the disaster that's going on right now. We have the Dick Durbin leaking the comments that allegedly the president said about continue on with the visa lottery system that comes from basically countries that the president doesn't feel on the whole offer anything to the United States because they're unskilled and uneducated, and so they're a drag on the economy. He made some unfortunate comments. If he didn't say that exactly, it seems like he said something close. And now that garbles the deal with DACA. It garbles the debate. What was Jim Gilmore's take on this whole thing?
Well, of course, I wasn't there, and I don't know what the president said. If he said the things that he said, it was probably not it was not a good choice of words at all. It enables his political opponents to change the subject and to really make the topic of the whole immigration debate a question of a vulgar statement, if in fact that was what was said. And the notion that, once again, back on the race topic again, to try to point out that or try to assert that the president is a racist, which, of course, changes the entire subject away from what we need to be talking about. What we need to be talking about here is what is the left wing's immigration policy and how do we address that? They never tell you. All they really tell you is that they want to treat people who are DACA people who were brought here as children, and then now they've never understood anything else, and to give them a opportunity here in this country. And that has to be addressed. Most of these young people now are grown-ups now and are adults, have taken certainly no effort to try to get themselves legalized under American law. So the question really is, what do we do? And I think that is a debate that we have to have. I think the president's position is that with all the discussion now of race and any unfortunate statements he may have made, we've gone away from that issue. But at the end of the day, I think the left wing in this country has to tell us what is their immigration policy. They have to state it clearly so that we can understand it and decide whether we want to adopt it or oppose it. But clearly we can't have the left wing's approach to immigration if, in fact, their approach is that anybody that can get to this country within violation of the American laws gets to be a citizen.
You know, I think
if that's their position, then I think we ought to address that openly and honestly and straightforwardly.
Governor, I think you're spot on, because the Democrats really they've not articulated an immigration reform position. So you have to take the opinion that they're for just an open borders as it is now. Even though we have laws, they don't matter. People just come in and then they get taken care of. And basically, we sent the message under the Democrats and some of the Republicans that if you could just get into the United States, whether it be a lottery visa or a train, if you could just get in, we're really nice people. We're not going to throw you out, and you're going to be taken care of. I mean, that's the message sent. I would like to know, like you said, what the Democrats' alternative is, because we're wasting a lot of time with what the president said in some meeting and racism and all this other stuff, and we're not getting to the core of the matter. And those that are shouting are drowning out reasonable people. I mean, it's just so unhealthy.
Yeah, I think that's the point we've really got to get to here. What is, and there's a larger sense here. If the left wing in this country, and again, I've slowed up now talking about Democrats so much. I thought the left is in control of the Democratic Party, but it won't necessarily always be. But if the American left position is that we have open borders and anybody who can physically get to this country gets to become an American citizen, then that's in contravention of the American law. Well, if you're going to, contravene the American law that's passed by the Congress under the Constitution on this topic, then I guess you can contravene the law on any topic.
Right.
And that opens the door to, frankly, just a left-wing type of approach to the United States with regard to the law. And that's really dangerous, I think, in the long run. So the immigration issue does have consequences beyond that. We either have to decide we're going to obey the law, or we're not going to obey the law, or we're going to change the law. But the president has just said this week that we're not even getting around to talking about DACA or talking about a reform or talking about the law or talking about enforcement because they've now changed the subject over to the president's person, and that's counterproductive. And the president opened that door probably, but at the end of the day, the Democrats don't want the subject now to be the immigration law. They want it to be beating up on the president.
Right, because that's just an easier argument to make, which was what I was trying to say on CNN the other day before they unceremoniously cut me off and put me in timeout.
I understand they beat you up on CNN the other day. I guess that should be a badge of courage for you.
I guess so, right? I mean, I got put in timeout, and then they all ganged up on me. But it was amazing there for 20 minutes. Like nobody would address any of the substantive economic arguments I made and what the president was attempting to do. All they wanted to do was call me names. It's very telling that the other side does not have they can't solve anything, right? They just want to demonize. Pretty interesting. Okay, now, the president announcing the following on the Iran nuclear deal the other day, Jim Gilmore, he said, "Despite my strong inclination, I have not yet withdrawn the United States from the Iran nuclear deal. Instead, I've outlined two possible paths either fix the deal's disastrous flaws or the United States will withdraw. The president then said that there has to be, in any Iran deal that he would sign, it has to include the prohibition of Iran from ever possessing a nuclear weapon with no expiration date. What do you think of this?
I think that it's part of the big picture. The big picture in the world today is that the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians want to change the world. The Iranians want to dominate the Middle East, and that is historically what they have wanted to do, and they've made a lot of progress now in Iraq and in Lebanon and even in Syria. They've made a tremendous amount of progress, and they're generating a pushback from the other parts of the Middle East, and it's just a powder keg. And I think that what the Iranians are basically saying is, look, we're going to slow up on this, but eventually we're going to have a nuclear weapon and a ballistic missile, and there's nothing you can do about it because you agreed to it. Mm-hmm. And I think the president is basically saying, look, we don't want to agree to that at all. And we have a right now, the United States, to reassess these situations and see what we can do. I do think there's going to be a need for a lot more close communication with our European allies, because I think they're very wrong-headed about a lot of these things, and they need to hear a clear message from the United States as to what our concerns are. And I'm not sure that diplomatically things are going the way that they need to go right now.
What about the Korean situation? Because you had the false alarm that went out on, I guess, Saturday or Sunday that scared a lot of people on the Hawaiian Islands. We understand that the top military people in the U.S., Mattis and Dumford, are preparing for what could be a war, even though nobody wants it. Where are we headed?
I think that the Korean situation is much clearer than the Iranian situation, and I think the president and his people are doing this very, very well. First of all, I want to tell your listeners this. I don't see any history at all of the United States or South Korea threatening North Korea. This is North Korea just jumping up and saying, well, we're going to just start to threaten you. And we're going to create these missiles, and we're going to create these bombs, and we're going to blow you up, and we're going to call you names. They're the ones that are generating the aggression, not us.
Right.
We're the ones that are in a defensive posture. However, the president, I believe, is doing it exactly the right way. We don't really want to have a military conflict, but I think he's drawn the line and said that if it's necessary to protect the people of the United States, we will have a military conflict, if that's what it takes to protect San Francisco, Los Angeles, or Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Now, with that being said, what we're really doing right now is a much more moderate approach, which is to squeeze the North Koreans. They don't have any money, John, no money at all. They don't have any resources. So they're just, blustering away here and endangering the rest of the world with almost no real resources. So we're squeezing them. And I think at some point there will be a rebellion or a revolution in that country that will throw these gangsters out and kill them all and create something better. And that's what's going to happen if they don't yield. My bet is now they're going to yield. I'll bet you that they're going to end up in a negotiation. We may not be a part of it, but with the South Koreans at the very least. And that's why you're seeing this opening on the Olympics and this new approaches that are going on, because the North Koreans are basically saying we can't stand this economic pressure and military pressure that the United States is putting on us, so we're going to have to yield. And I think that's what's going to happen. I don't believe there'll be a military conflict, and I think this is going to be a victory for the president.
Well, it seems to me, Governor, that having had this conversation again today, that you really need to be in the U.S. Senate debate. You really need to be in this race and talking about these issues that you feel so passionately on and that you're able to articulate with such authority. And I think you not being in that race, I think everybody's missing something. So what do you say?
Well, that's a really nice thing for you to say. I've devoted a lot of my life now for the last number of years to foreign policy issues and national security issues. I chaired the National Commission on Terrorism for the United States. I've been addressing this issue through my nonprofit, AmericanOpportunity.org, as well as economic growth issues. So I've been very steeped in these federal issues for quite a while. But I'm really focused also on my home state of Virginia. I was there for the inauguration. I listened to the new governor's address. And also I'm focused on these federal issues. So the point is this, John, all of the candidates on the Republican side for the United States Senate are differently positioned. Corey Stewart is just going to run come hell or high water. E.W. Jackson is interested in putting himself forward. Nick Freitas, who was bought some advertising time for you, is a young guy, second term, member of the House of Delegates. He has his future ahead of him and very little to lose by running, gets his name out there. I'm not positioned like that. I'm at the point in my life where I have to actually win at the Senate seat if I run. And that requires a serious calculation as to the mood of the state and the mood of the country at this particular point in time. But I would like to be a United States Senator because I would like to help my state and help my country. But with the question of whether I'm going to run this year or not, I have a lot of private obligations in my career, and they have to all be weighed and balanced. But I appreciate your encouragement and your nice things that you say about me.
Well, I think you would add to the debate, and I think somebody like yourself in that race is going to force everybody else to raise the dialogue to a different plane. And I think that in and of itself, and the environment currently, Governor Gilmore, that we're in, is going to be extremely helpful. And, I think if you get in, you have as good a shot as anybody. John Fredericks.
Yeah, whatever that means. But the main thing is that your listeners need to understand that I've been very successful in a lot of different things over the last 10 years. I've moved on to a lot of things, including obligations to public companies that I serve on that are making great progress and on behalf of shareholders and successful. And I have to think about those obligations as well as my obligation to my country and to my state. But I've always done that kind of thing as a military man, as attorney general, as governor, as prosecutor. It's been my joy in life to serve the people of my state and my country, and I hope there'll be opportunities to continue to do that.
Well, plus you have to spend time with your lovely wife, Roxanne, right? That's the other thing.
Indeed so. And
we have
a great life together at the same time. We enjoyed being down there for the inauguration. I think the governor-elect didn't say really an awful lot when you boil it down. All he really said was he wanted to expand Medicaid and he wanted to ban guns, more or less. And that's kind of standard fare right now for the American left. I don't think it was particularly creative, but he's a nice, moderate guy with a lovely tone of voice. And let's see what happens.
All right, Governor, I got to take off.